Hello creeps, Anna here. I know it has been a while since I've seen you. I have missed you greatly. I was gone for a minute, but I'm back now. And now I hope that that Logic song is stuck in your head for the rest of the day. I feel very exposed. Oh, because they cut the fucking tree. No! So today I wanted to talk about winter horror book recommendations. So these aren't all horror. I got some horror, I got some sci-fi, I got some thriller. Hold on, let me silence that. That's annoying. So I got a mixture of everything. I really tried to touch a variety of different topics with this video. So hopefully you will find something to enjoy reading for winter. I know it's not winter yet, technically. However, it sure as heck feels like it. Definitely is colder this year than it has been in recent years. So I thought, let's do this a bit early and get in some like cozy winter horror, thriller, sci-fi book recommendations. So let's get started. Let me grab the books actually. Oh, okay. Here. Oh, ow, ow, ow. I'm good. Let's start here. The very first book that I want to recommend is The Terror by Dan Simmons. Wow, this book is so good. I put this in a book haul probably like 6 months ago, and some of you are like, you're gonna love that book, and you, my friend, were correct. I read a different Dan Simmons book this year. Actually, it was in my summer book recommendations, and I loved that book, and I loved this book. Like, I like this one even more. So this is about if you know anything about the Franklin expedition in the 1800s, it's about two ships that were made to go up to the Arctic to try to prove that the Northwest Passage existed. Is that right? Yeah, Northwest Passage existed. Yes. So it is based on true events, and obviously not all of it, but there are historical elements to it. And honestly, those were the most disturbing, because you have on top of this expedition, you have this like monster that's coming and eating part of the crew. And so that's kind of like a parallel plot with it, and they intertangle here and there. But most of the time you're just honestly following these men like dying of scurvy, their food running low, they're stuck in the ice for years, mutiny, frostbite. There's just so many horrendous things that happen in this book that even without that horror element, I think that it's quite a disturbing read. This really stuck with me. And honestly, I think it was because, you know, you're reading this thinking like, man, people actually had to go through this. So it is a wild ride, a fantastic novel. I will say it is not all blood and guts from the get-go. That monster, in fact, it's like an 800-page book, and the monster really doesn't show up that crazy often. It does focus heavily on just following these men, kind of their day-to-day life in this expedition, and the blood and horror of that, I think far exceeds the horror of this this beast that's eating them. Yeah, it's kind of hard to read at times. It switches perspectives, so you get, you know, a doctor's perspective, a captain's perspective, other people on the ship, but it is so heartbreaking at times. It really did destroy me in a way that a book hasn't. I wanted to make its own video because sometimes I do like the most disturbing books I've read. So let me know if you guys want me to do a whole video on like the most disturbing books that I've read while still being entertaining, because I know there are a lot of like horrendous books that they're not even fun to get through. But I'm not talking about those. But if I did one of those videos, this would absolutely be in there. I mean, this was on my mind 24/7. I talked about scurvy for like a solid few weeks reading this book. It still comes up actually more often than probably most people around me would appreciate. Let's move on to the next one. But yeah, highly recommend that. Just know it's more of a slow burn. It's not crazy actiony blood and guts there, but if you like more historical fiction, or you know, like something based on something that has happened, that's historical fiction, then pick that one up for sure. Oh, also I would just say, don't Google the Franklin expedition before reading that book. I would wait until afterwards, just trust me, okay? Book number 2 is a Darcy Coates book. Oh my god, Darcy Coates, she's never ever recommended a Darcy Coates book in her life. I know, that's so crazy. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna be recommending these for the rest of my days, okay? I just love her so much. So this is Secrets in the Dark, and this is actually the second book in the series. The first one is called I'm acting like I have my glasses on and I can read anything. The first one was called Voices in the Snow, I believe, and this is the second in the series. I want to say maybe last winter I recommended that one. I'm going to leave my winter recommendations videos from last year too, and I also did a video reading Christmas horror books as well, so I'll leave that linked down below. Still stand by those books. Those winter book recommendations were fantastic too, so highly recommend checking that out if you guys want more recommendations. But I think I recommended the first one in the series, but I read this one and I just had to talk about it. So the first one is kind of like you're going into the apocalypse kind of book. There are these places called like quiet zones or something, they call them something like that, silent areas, quiet zones, I don't know, I can't remember. Basically they're areas in large towns that go completely silent and nobody can contact them, and if you go into those areas you're never heard from again. So she ends up, this woman Claire ends up trying to find her sister, going to meet her sister, crashes her car and gets saved by a man. His name's Doran. Doran, is that how you pronounce that? And so Doran saves her, and the whole book is them like getting to know each other, not fully trusting each other at first, and then also fighting these like monsters, because it turns people into, in the first book, more like monsters. This one, they leave that house and they go to find Claire's sister. They're able to contact her through radio, so they know that she's still alive, or that she was at one point. They go out to search for her, and this one feels more like a zombie apocalypse book. They're like running through the streets being chased by these things, and they're less monsters. Well, I guess they're still monsters, but in a different way than they are in the first. But it is a very different book from the first one. I enjoyed the heck out of this, but I will say I don't know if I would have cared for the characters as much had I not read the first book. So if you're gonna read this one, you gotta read the first one too. That one's a little bit more like romance heavy, and maybe that's not your thing, and I honestly didn't know it was my thing until I read that book and absolutely adored it. Highly recommend this book. If you guys are going to pick up a Darcy Coates book in the winter, definitely pick up this series. I just think that it's a lot of fun. Third, we're going The Martian. Okay, this might seem like a weird book recommendation. It's sci-fi, you're on Mars, what does this have to do with winter? But hear me out, I was thinking about the common themes throughout my winter books, and it's isolation and cold. And guess what Mars has, my friends? Both isolation and cold. So I thought it was actually a pretty good book to recommend for winter. And it's interesting because there are some similarities between this and The Terror. Like they use the same old tools to navigate, and like the temperature is the same sometimes. And it was just kind of an interesting thing to find commonalities in both of those books that are very, very different. But this book is so good. This book is fantastic. It's great. It's excellent. I loved every page of it. It's about this group of astronauts that go up to Mars. One of them, their suit gets punctured and therefore they assume he is dead. They leave him there and he is alive. His name is Mark Watney, and just like his perseverance to live is so inspiring. His ability to figure things out for himself. He's a botanist slash, I think, mechanical engineer or something like that. And so he's very, very intelligent, and it did make me feel like an inept human. Like if I were stranded down the street from my house, I don't know if I would survive, let alone Mars. But it was really interesting to just read and like see his struggles and watch him do things. The thing that I loved most about this book is, for example, in a book, it might say like, okay, well, I need food to survive, so I'm gonna grow my own plants. And then it'll be like, okay, I'm growing my own plants. But this, he breaks down everything, and it's done in terms that you can kind of comprehend. I mean, I'm not gonna lie and pretend that I understand the mathematics behind what he talks about, but it's so interesting to see how his brain works and calculates different things and figures things out. In fact, I do believe the author said that astronauts have written him and said this is the most realistic science fiction book that they've ever read. So keep that in mind while reading it. I thought it was fantastic. The author is really interesting too. I'm gonna get more into this one because I'm gonna do a movie verse book on it, but just know this book is so good. So highly recommend this if you guys are into sci-fi, space travel, and if you guys are also into just like knowing the you know, behind the scenes of the mathematics of astronauts and stuff. It's very interesting to read. Highly recommend this one. The next one I recommend is this guy. This is The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkoff. This is the first book that I've read from her, and man, I really, really liked it. So this one is a thriller, and it's cool because you get 3 separate stories. Maybe I shouldn't go in too much detail, but you get 3 separate stories and you're going back and forth between all of them. But the main story is this woman who's staying in a cabin, and there is a young boy found outside in a snowstorm. And so she brings the young boy in, but he's not speaking. She has no idea where he comes from. And the story, you know, continues from there. I don't want to give too much away, but she's a true crime writer. One of the other stories that's told is the story that she's writing her true crime book on. So it's a very interesting read. I don't think I've really read anything quite like this before. I highly recommend this. I think it's fun. If you guys are just interested in like thrillers in general, I think that this is a fun one to read. Highly recommend. Yeah, this was a good one. I can't really say like too much about it, you know? And next up, this one's a little bit hard to place. So this one's called These Silent Woods, and it's by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. This book is in the thriller section, although I feel like that's a bit misleading, and I felt a bit misled reading it as a thriller, but not in a way that it disappointed the story. I've really loved this book. But I would say that if it were a movie, it would be 100% a drama, like a family drama. So I don't know that thriller is the right word to describe this, but I don't know, I guess, what other category it would fit into other than fiction. But it's definitely more like heartbreaking. It's a slow burn. It's a story about a man and his young daughter who are isolated in the woods in a small cabin. And at first you don't know what's going on or why they ended up there, and you slowly get to see glimpses into the past, and it's just heartbreaking and horrible, and you just get to see awful things happening to people, and like them just having to deal with the consequences of things that just change your life overnight. It is a really messed up story, and it's also hard to read because it's not that there are good and bad characters, it's that every single character is good and bad, so they're realistic. This one's like a tearjerker. Let me tell you, I had said it a few months back that the only book I can remember making me cry, like sob, is The Outsiders, and I read that in 6th grade. Oh, I cried reading this book. Oh, I bawled reading this book. It was like 3 in the morning, and I am just crying reading this. It is a really sad, like tearjerker, heartbreaky story. It still fits the themes of isolation and cold and things like that. There are like very little elements of thriller in there, but most of it is just like a sad, heartbreaking story. If you want to cry, pick this guy up. But if you don't, maybe avoid that one. Those are my winter horror book recommendations. I hope that you found something in here that kind of piqued your interest. Please feel free to leave any of your horror book winter recommendations down below for me, because I'm still looking for like snowy, cozy, spooky books to read this winter season, because winter hasn't even started. It is upon us though. I have a lot of videos coming up. I know it's been a while, but I'm getting back into the groove of film. Actually, I filmed a lot of videos. I was just like, oh, these are trash. I never uploaded any of them. But hopefully I'm over that now. And so, yeah, moving forward, I've got some Christmassy videos and just, you know, other horror stuff. I'm going to be uploading the movie Movieverse book, as well as the Martian Movieverse book within the next little while here. So hopefully you enjoy those. I will see you soon with another horror video. Thank you so much for watching. I have missed you dearly. Okay, bye guys.